Hello and welcome to episode 206 of Rivers Arcade Review. My name is Ed. This channel is dedicated to the coin-operated video games of yesteryear. Today I'll be reviewing a favorite of mine, Namco Classic Collection Vol.1. Namco Classic Collection Vol.1 was released in 1995 by Namco. My first time playing this game was at Funway Entertainment Center in Batavia, Illinois. Namco Classic Collection Vol.1 is a multi-game cabinet in which you control your ship or character with an 8-way joystick and 2 buttons, each game using the buttons differently. The cabinet offers 7 games in all. These games include Galaga, Xevious, Super Xevious, as well as Mappy. Also included are the arrangement versions of Galaga, Xevious, and Mappy. The arrangement versions of the games are a complete re-release of the originals, offering many new things including a 2-player simultaneous mode. Due to the many changes of the arrangement versions, I will only be covering one of the games per video. For this video I'll be covering Galaga arrangement. Since this is a 2-player simultaneous game, each player will control a different colored ship. Player 1 will control the white and red ship, and Player 2 will control the green and blue ship. Player 2 will be positioned slightly above Player 1, although this positioning will be swapped if Player 2 begins first. I will be reviewing this game as a 2-player mode, although if there are any differences I will note them. During the 2-player game, scores will be kept singly as well as jointly. One player's shots will not affect the other player. It is also possible for Player 2 to play by themselves. Just like before, you can have 2 shots on screen before you can fire again. In addition, there are some graphical differences. When moving left and right, your ship will bank to the side, making your ship appear slimmer than when standing still. The first stage plays exactly the same as the original, although there are some graphical changes to the enemies. To check out my review of the original Galaga, please check episode 39 of my reviews. The enemies are graphically improved, giving them more detail, although they will act the same. The 3 original enemies have returned, which are a red, yellow, and blue bee called Zako, a blue, white, and red bug called Goey, and a yellow, green, and red bug called the Boss Galaga. Just like the original, the enemies will appear from the side in groups of 8 before joining formation. One by one, these enemies will peel off from the formation and then begin attacking your ship. Just like the original, the Boss Galaga will fly down from a formation and activate a tractor beam. If your ship enters the tractor beam, the boss will capture it and bring it to the top of the formation, and a replacement ship from your stock will immediately take its place. If you lose your last life by either enemy impact or boss capture, you are allowed to continue for an additional credit. Hitting the boss when he has your captured ship will cause it to fall downward and join your ship, making it twice as wide and increasing your firepower. Unlike the original, your increased firepower will be just under the width of your ship as opposed to twin shots. Something new is you can now shoot the boss when holding the ship in formation, and you will not lose the ship. Destroying the boss in formation will automatically drop the ship to dock with yours, increasing your firepower. In addition, if Player 1 has their ship captured, Player 2 can destroy the boss, increasing their own firepower. Another new item for this game is it's possible for the tractor beam to affect your double ship. If your double ship is contacted by the tractor beam, it will take away one of the ships and leave one remaining. When this happens, you must destroy the boss to reclaim the ship, although the opposing player can once again defeat the boss and claim the captured ship. If you have a powered up ship and you destroy the boss holding the player's ship, it will fall off the playfield and return to your stock. If the boss captures both players' ships, the boss will look as though it's holding a player's double ship. Defeating the boss will once again drop the ship, and the player who shot it will receive the power-up, and the remaining ship will return to your stock. Once the final enemy is destroyed, both ships will fly upward off the screen, and a statistics screen displaying the number of hits per player and which player wins the round. If both players have an equal number of hits, it will show a draw. Stage 2 will begin something new, which are named zones. This stage will take place in the asteroid zone. In addition to the starfield, there will be asteroids in the distant background. These asteroids will not affect gameplay. Another new item for this stage is the enemies will enter in a completely new way. Just above your ship, a black hole will appear, and a Zako and a new enemy will appear from it. This new enemy is a blue spider-shaped enemy named Yubako Mushi. These enemies will fly upward to the top of the playfield, and it will spin around several times before escaping, opening up another black hole where the next set of enemies will appear. These enemies will fly outward on a pinwheel design before retreating to the center. They will do this one more time before entering the same formation as before. This stage will play the same as before, and defeating all the enemies will get you another statistics screen, and then you will advance to stage 3. This stage will still be in the asteroid zone, although the asteroids will be larger. The enemies will appear from a row of black holes near the top of the playfield. They will appear in 3 groups of 6, each led by either a boss or a Yukaba Mushi. 2 of the groups will join formation, although one will exit the screen. This will happen one more time with the same outcome, then finally 2 groups of 6 will appear, fly around, then join the formation. This formation will be the same as before, although 2 of the Zakos have been replaced with Yubako Mushi. Other than these changes, the gameplay will remain the same. For Stage 4, the enemies will appear in 4 different rows and fly in a circular pattern several times before joining the formation. Once you are down to a few enemies, something new will happen. 2 Yabuku Mushi will appear from a black hole bringing reinforcements. There will be 2 rows of 4 enemies following the Yabuku Mushi. These enemies are from left to right, 4 green grasshopper-shaped enemy named Bata. 4 enemies to the right are 4 pink and yellow enemies called Ogamushi. These enemies will fly outward and form a circle near the edge of the playfield, and they will circle in a clockwise formation. While flying in the circle, both formations will then fly in a counterclockwise format. They will only make 1 full rotation around the playfield. After being on screen for about 10.5 seconds, they will fly off the playfield. You can shoot these enemies for extra points, although if you don't do so, it will count against your statistics. Once you defeat all the enemies, the ship will fly off the screen and you'll once again get the statistics screen. After the statistics screen, you will advance to Stage 5, which is the challenging stage. Just like the original game, groups of enemies will fly onto the playfield. The first group of enemies will be 2 groups of 10 Ogamushi will fly in from the sides before forming 2 circles, flying around for about 2.5 seconds before flying off. Next, 2 rows of Zaka will fly in, then form circles and will circle around for about 3.5 seconds before exiting. Now, a new enemy will make an appearance, which is a large red ladybug-shaped enemy named Boss Tentamushi. Like the original boss, you must shoot it twice to defeat it. 2 rows of 2 Boss Tentamushi, 2 Goi, and 3 Zaka will enter and hide behind one another before moving to another position. This will happen 3 times and will take about 5.5 seconds before exiting. Next, a Boss Tentamushi will appear, followed by a Goi and a Zako, although there are actually 4 of each of these enemies. Just like the previous set of enemies, they will separate briefly and fly behind one another. This will happen 2 more times before splitting into groups of 4. They will continue to rotate and appear and disappear several more times before retreating off screen. After the last enemy either gets destroyed or escapes, your ships will fly off the screen and the statistics screen will show the number of hits, and you will earn a 100-point bonus for each enemy hit. You will also get an extra bonus of 10,000 points for winning the round. If the round ends in a tie, each player will earn a 5,000 point bonus. You'll also earn a special bonus of 10,000 points per player for defeating all enemies, and a lucky audience bonus of 7,650 points per player for completing the challenging stage without hitting any of the enemies. During the single player mode, scoring will be the same as the original game with the exception of the lucky bonus, which is still in effect. Round 6 begins with the black hole at the top center of the screen where the enemies will appear from. 2 rows of 8 Zako will appear, followed by 8 Goi and 2 Yubako Mushi. These enemies will fly around the playfield before joining in the formation. 2 more rows of Zako will appear, along with 2 Boss Churros surrounded by a Boss Galaga on each side and 2 Goi on the inside. The Boss Churro will act similarly to the regular boss, meaning it will take 2 shots to defeat it. This boss will also have a tractor beam, although this one is yellow. If your ship gets captured, you must once again defeat the boss to get your ship back. Although your ship will become white again, it will now be yellow as opposed to blue, and you will now be able to have 4 shots on screen as opposed to 2. Just like Stage 4, reinforcements will appear from a black hole in the center of the playfield. 2 rows of enemies consisting of 3 Zako and 3 Goi, along with the Boss Churro, will fly outward and swing up and down, replenishing missing enemies in the formation. This will happen 2 more times about 2.5 seconds apart, although in the last row, the boss will be replaced by 2 Yubako Mushi. Stage 7 will bring you to the Nebula Zone. This one will have purple clouds in the background, although they will not affect gameplay. For this stage, the enemies will enter through a series of black holes and fly up and down in formation until settling into the traditional formation. For this stage, the reinforcements will be brought on screen by another new enemy, which is the Microsome Flower. Once this enemy reaches the mid-center of the playfield, 5 rows of Goi and Zaka will appear and fly in a pinwheel pattern. After spinning in both directions, these enemies will replace missing enemies in the formation. For Stage 8, the enemies will enter in a more traditional way similar to the original game. For this stage, the reinforcements will also enter similarly to the original game. There will also be a new enemy, which is a light-blue X-shaped enemy called a Membo. These enemies zigzag when attacking. Stage 9 will begin with 3 Yabuku Mushi and 4 Ogamushi flying in from the top in a pyramid formation, then flying halfway down before retreating off screen. Then 2 Microsome flowers will appear about halfway up, then the enemies will appear from the top and be collected by the flowers, then released into the traditional formation. During this stage, an enormous bee will fly in from the top of the playfield. The reinforcements will appear from this bee. Other than the bee, there will be no new enemies. Stage 10 will be another challenging stage. For this stage, the first wave of enemies will consist of 4 boss Churro and 4 boss Tentamushi surrounding 2 circles of 3 Zako and 3 boss Galagas. These enemies will rotate as well as the circles also rotate, while the Churro and Tentamushi rotate in the opposite direction. This will continue for about 4.5 seconds before exiting. The second wave of enemies will consist of 8 boss Churro and 8 boss Tentamushi in a checkerboard pattern with 4 boss Galaga inside. The boss Galaga will rotate around inside the checkerboard while the entire checkerboard moves around as well as rotate around the playfield. The third wave will consist of 4 boss Tentamushi and 6 Zako. They will fly in formation near the bottom of the playfield before retreating off screen. This will happen twice before the stage ends. You'll earn bonus points the same as the first challenging stage. Stage 11 will begin with 2 asteroids flying in and positioning themselves just above your ships, getting in way of your shots. You can destroy these asteroids for points. Once the asteroids take their position, 2 black holes will appear near the bottom of the playfield on the edges. The enemies will emerge from these black holes. For this stage, a new enemy will appear. This new enemy is a green diamond-shaped enemy called E. This enemy will also make quick zigzag movements when attacking. For this stage, there will be only 1 set of reinforcements. Stage 12 will take place in the Galaxy Zone. This zone will have several different shaped galaxies scrolling in the background. For this stage, the first formation of attackers will only consist of 13 enemies. The first 2 sets of reinforcements will contain 15 enemies, although the third set of reinforcements will be a full complement of enemies. Stage 13 will have the enemies enter similarly to the original game, although with the same enemies as Stage 12. Something new for this round is once a row of enemies joins the formation, they will begin attacking while new rows of enemies are still entering. The reinforcements will appear in a rotating swarm near the top of the playfield. This stage will have a new enemy, which is a green dragonfly-shaped enemy called the Green Tombo. These enemies will attack from the formation, then stop at the same height as the bosses and pause for a half second before firing a fast shot downward, then retreating to the formation. Other than the Green Tombo, there will be no new enemies. For Stage 14, the enemies will appear in one large group before joining the formation. Shortly after, the boss Churro along with Amiibo will join in the formation. For this stage, 2 sets of Green Tombo reinforcements will appear. Stage 15 is another challenging stage. The first wave of enemies will consist of 2 rows of alternating boss Tentamushi and boss Galaga. These rows will rotate around the playfield for about 5 seconds before exit. The next wave of enemies will begin with the boss Tentamushi flying in before emitting 4 Green Tombo and 4 E. They will expand in a circle, rotate and contract before retreating behind the boss Tentamushi, and they will leave the playfield. Then, another boss Tentamushi will enter and 8 more enemies will emit, this time 4 Amiibo and 4 Goi. They will also circle before retreating. This will happen one more time with the original 2 enemies before 2 rows of 5 Goi will fly around before exiting. Finally, 2 boss Tentamushi will fly around, then a boss Galaga will fly down before retreating. Stage 16 will begin with 4 asteroids flying in toward the center of the playfield. Surrounding the asteroids will be 8 black holes. 4 different sets of enemies will emerge from these black holes. The first will be Amiibo, the second will be Bata, the third will be Goi, and the fourth will be E. The asteroid enemies will circle the playfield about 3 times before the enemies join the formation. While the enemies are flying in formation, 4 boss Tentamushi will also fly to the formation. This is the first appearance of the boss Tentamushi in formation. These enemies will also have a tractor beam, but it will be red. Being captured by the tractor beam will react the same way as the previous bosses, although when you reclaim the captured ship, you'll once again have a wide ship, although now you will have a triple shot. Your ship will now shoot at 3 different angles. The first will shoot straight up, and the other 2 will fire about 30 degrees at opposing angles. In addition, the angle shots will bounce off the edge of the playfield, allowing you to hit enemies with ricochet shots. This round will also have 2 sets of reinforcements that will appear from black holes. Stage 17 will bring you to the Space Planet Zone. This area will take place above what looks like a top-down view of a cityscape. 11 groups of 4 enemies will enter from the top and fly downward in a zigzag pattern. They will lower 6 times before joining the formation. This stage will introduce a new enemy, which is a brown spider-shaped enemy called Kumo. These enemies will attack in an S pattern. This round will only have 1 set of reinforcements. Stage 18 will begin with a Yubako Mushi flying up from the bottom and stop near the top center. After spinning around about 6 times, it will emit 24 Goi outward that will circle the Yabuku Mushi. These enemies will fly in and out several times before exiting. Next, 24 Bata will appear and do the same thing as the Goi. Next, 24 enemies consisting of 12 Amiibo and 12 new enemies which have 2 different colored wings, 1 red and 1 blue, called a 2-colored Tentamushi. This group will do the same as the previous 2 groups before joining formation, followed by 4 boss Churros. The new enemies will attack in a wide S-shaped pattern with loops included. Immediately the reinforcements will appear. The reinforcements will consist of 3 groups of 4 each of the bosses. The next set of reinforcements will act the same as the original entrance of the enemies. Just like before, the formation will consist of the same layout. Stage 19 will begin with 16 amiibo before joining the formation. This will happen twice, then 3 beta and 2 boss churro will appear before joining the formation. Next, 3 beta and 2 boss Tentamushi will do the same thing. Next, a row of 2 colored Tentamushi will join the formation. The first set of reinforcements will not have any new enemies, although the second set will bring an enormous ant. Similarly to the enormous bee, a full complement of Kuma will appear out of it and join the formation. Other than the giant ant, there will be no new enemies. Stage 20 is another challenging stage. This stage will begin by introducing 2 new enemies. The first will be a purple spider called Hitaru. The second is a red and blue winged moth. These enemies will group in a pyramid shape and crawl in a zigzagging pattern. They will attack in this pattern twice. The next wave of enemies will consist of 5 boss Tentamushi and 10 new enemies with the flagships from the game Galaxian named Galboss. They will enter, then do a dive bomb before exiting. They will also attack this way a second time. The next wave will consist of another new enemy, which is the Blue Tombo. These enemies will act the same as their green cousins, although faster. There will be 6 Blue Tombo and 6 Boss Churro. They will fly around alternating between a double line and an oval. They will rotate around the playfield before leaving. Stage 21 will begin with a new enemy, which is a worm-shaped enemy called the Baby Moth. These enemies will fly downward before retreating off screen. When attacking, these enemies will quickly change position and pause when charging downward. After the Baby Moths leave the screen, an entire barrage of enemies will fly down from the top of the playfield. These enemies will consist of 22 Zako, 6 Green Goi, 6 Baby Moths, 2 Boss Churro, and 2 Boss Tentamushi. They will all stop just above your ships before flying to the top and into formation. When the Baby Moths are attacking, they will reach the bottom of the playfield, they will pause briefly, and shortly hatch into full moth. Once the enemies take the traditional formation with 2 rows of 8 Zako at the bottom, 1 row of Green Goi above the Zako, 1 row of Baby Moths above the Green Goi, and 2 Boss Churro and 2 Boss Tentamushi on the top row. The Green Goi will act the same as their red cousins, only faster. The first set of reinforcements will consist of 5 Green Goi and 5 Yabuku Mushi. The second set of reinforcements will consist of multiple Ogamushi, Blue Tombo, and Boss Galaga. Stage 22 will take place in the Space Flower Zone. For this zone there will be large flowers in the background. The enemies will appear from a black hole near the top of the playfield. First, 8 Green Goi followed by 8 Zako followed by 16 Haturu followed by 4 Boss Tentamushi. These enemies will fly around in a circular pattern before they join the formation. For this stage, the first wave of reinforcements will consist of Blue Tombo, Hotaru, and Boss Galaga. The second wave of reinforcements will consist of Zako, Hotaru, Green Goi, and Boss Tentamushi. Stage 23 will consist of Yabuku Mushi, Goi, Ogamushi, Boss Churro, and Boss Tentamushi. These enemies will form an asterisk-shaped formation. The first wave of reinforcements of 4 each of the bosses will surround the Microsm flowers. This will happen twice before the end of the stage. Stage 24 will have the enemies emit from a black hole near the center of the playfield. A large number of Harusha and Boss Tentamuchi will appear and fly around in a large spiral before exiting. Next, 2 lines of Hotaru and Zako will appear and flap like wings, followed by another set of the same enemies. Next, 2 rows of Baby Moths and Green Goi will show up, then Blue Tombo and Green Goi, and finally the Boss Galaga and Boss Churro. After what look like the flapping, these enemies will fall into the traditional formation. The first wave of reinforcements will consist of Blue Tombo, Baby Moths, and Boss Galaga. The second wave will consist of Green Goi, Yabuku Mushi, and Boss Galaga. The third wave will consist of Zako and Boss Galaga. Stage 25 is the final challenging stage. The first wave will consist of 4 Boss Tentamushi and 4 Baby Tentamushi. The next will be 4 Blue Tombo and 4 Boss Churro. Next, 4 Green Goi and 4 Boss Galaga. All these enemies will circle the playfield before exiting. Next, the pattern will repeat with the same 4 Boss and 4 Baby Tentamushi. Next, 4 Zako and 4 Boss Galaga, and then 4 Hitaru and 4 Boss Churro. They once again will circle the playfield before exiting. Now, the final 12 enemies will alternate between Zako and Boss Galaga. They will enter one at a time and form a line of 4. Each will remain on screen until a replacement appears before it leaves. Stage 26 will begin with 2 large asteroids falling from above and landing at the bottom of the playfield. These asteroids will roll around the bottom of the playfield. These asteroids must either be shot before landing or avoided because contacting them will cost you a life. Immediately, 8 each of Green Goey, Zako, Blue Tombo, Bataro, followed by 6 baby moths, a boss Galaga, 6 more baby moths, 8 more Tombo, then a boss Tentamushi, and more Zako. After the last Zako is destroyed, 2 more asteroids will fly downward and exit the playfield, followed by 2 Galabos. Afterwards, several black holes will open and the next wave of enemies will emerge and fly around the playfield before forming the traditional formation with Zako on the bottom 2 rows, Green Goey on the next 2 rows, and 4 boss Churro on the top. The reinforcements will appear from several black holes. The reinforcements will consist of Hirashu, Blue Tombo, and boss Galaga. This time they will join a smaller formation consisting of 1 row per enemy. The next set of reinforcements will begin as an asteroid. A large number of baby moths, Zako, and boss Churro will appear from it. The asteroid will remain on screen as the reinforcements form a traditional formation with only baby moths and boss Churro. Stage 27 takes place in the enemy calm zone. A large number of Hotaro, 2-color Tentamushi, and boss Tamushi will appear from a series of black holes. They will fly around the playfield multiple times before joining the formation. The reinforcements will appear from a black hole. The first wave will consist of a large number of Green Goey flying outward then inward before retreating. Next, a set of Blue Tombo will do the same. Next, Bataro and 2-color Tentamushi will alternate while flying the same pattern before joining the formation. Next, 4 boss Churro will fly in a similar pattern, then fly to the top of the formation. The second wave of reinforcements will be Green Goey, Hitaro, Zako, and boss Tentamushi will appear. They will do a zigzag pattern while approaching. Once they near the top of the playfield, they will fall into formation. The third wave of reinforcements will consist of Green Goey, Blue Tombo, boss Churro, and 2-color Tentamushi. They will also fly around before joining the formation. Stage 28 will begin with 2 groups of Hitaro, followed by a group of Blue Tombo, then 2-color Tentamushi, followed by boss Tentamushi. As each group finishes their entry, they will join the formation. The first wave of reinforcements will consist of Blue Tombo, Hitaro, Green Goey, 2-color Tentamushi, and boss Galaga. The second set of reinforcements will consist of Hitaro, Blue Tombo, 2-color Tentamushi, and boss Churro. The third set of reinforcements will consist of Zako, 2-color Tentamushi, Blue Tombo, Hitaro, Green Goey, and boss Galaga. Stage 29 will consist of Zako, Hitaro, 2-color Tentamushi, and boss Galaga. They will appear in 4 rows and will spin in a pinwheel formation before falling into formation. The first wave of reinforcements will consist of Green Goey, Blue Tombo, Hitaro, and boss Churro. They will form a similar pinwheel like before. The second wave of reinforcements will consist of Zako, Yabuko Mushi, and boss Galaga. They will fly in a cyclone formation before joining the traditional formation. The third wave of reinforcements will consist of Hitaro and boss Tentamushi and will act similar to the previous wave of reinforcements. The fourth wave of reinforcements will begin with 2 enormous ants entering the playfield before stopping in the center. A large number of baby Tentamushi will come out of these spiders. Shortly after that, a second pair of spiders will appear and more baby Tentamushi will appear, although they will be blue. A fifth spider will appear and even more baby Tentamushi will appear along with 2-color Tentamushi along with boss Tentamushi. Defeating the final enemies will bring you to the final stage and you'll get the message, Beat King Galspark. 8 enemies will enter consisting of Zako, Goey, a Green Tombo, an Amiibo, 2 boss Galaga, and 2 boss Tentamushi. Once you defeat these enemies, the final new enemy, the King Galspark, will enter. This enemy will stay at the top of the playfield and continuously bounce and move back and forth while firing at you. While this is happening, 2 enormous bees will fly in below and guard the king. While in position, they will not only block your shots, they will each fire 2 sets of 4 large diamond-shaped shots at you. You must avoid these shots because they are invulnerable and will cost you a life if they contact you. After firing the 2 sets of diamond-shaped shots, the enormous bees will exit the playfield and be replaced by 2 more enormous bees. It will take 200 hits to defeat the king. Once you hit the king 50 times, the enormous bees will no longer guard the king. After the final set of enormous bees leaves, the reinforcements will begin appearing. The reinforcements will include Zako, Goey, Green Tombo, Amiibo, boss Tentamushi, and boss Galaga. These enemies will form a line giving protection to the king while the 2 bosses will remain in the upper right corner. These reinforcements will continue to reappear until you hit the king another 50 times. Once you hit the boss the second 50 times, it will begin moving much faster as well as beginning to fire the same type of shots that the enormous bees were firing at you earlier in the round. It will fire 4 sets of 8 shots from left to right. After firing the final shot, it will dive bomb your ship in an attempt to destroy it. You must avoid the king or you will lose a life. Each time you hit the king, it will move faster. It will take another 100 hits to defeat the king. Once you hit the king the second 100th time, it will change colors multiple times before exploding. Once you defeat the king, you'll get the final statistics screen and you'll earn a bonus for remaining extra lives. You'll also earn a time bonus based on how fast you complete the game, although I couldn't find the breakdown of how that system works. After the statistics screen, you'll get a congratulations screen. This screen looks a bit pixelated, although it may be an emulation glitch. After this screen, you'll get the end credits screen. After the end credits screen, you'll get the final statistics screen before advancing to the initial entry if you have scored high enough. Scoring for the game is as follows. You'll earn 30 points for each baby Tentamushi, 50 points for each Zako, 80 points for each Goi, 70 points for each Amiibo, 90 points for each Bata, 100 points for each Blue Tombo, 110 points for each Green Tombo, 120 points for each Hataro and Kumu, 150 points for each Baby Moth, E, Galboss, Ogamushi, and Yabokamushi, 200 points for each Green Goi and 2-colored Tentamushi, 400 points for each Boss Chiro and Boss Galaga, 500 points for each Boss Tentamushi, Enormous Ant, and Enormous Bee, 800 points for each Moth, and 1000 points for each Asteroid and Microsm Flower. These scores are for destroying these enemies while in formation, and they will be doubled when they are charging. You'll also earn 100,000 points for defeating King Galspark. I enjoyed playing this game, although I did find it to be quite the quarter eater, and I highly recommend playing it whether in an arcade setting or on an emulator. I like this game more than Galaga, but not as much as Galaga 88, so Galaga Arrangement shoots its way into the 50th position overall. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any games you'd like me to review, please leave a message below or on my homepage. Please remember to hit like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned to new videos on the first and third Sunday of the month.